The Albanese government's Minister for Escalating Power Prices, Chris Bowen, has been at it again, citing the CSIRO's latest Gen Cost report as further proof that Labor is delivering the cheapest electricity available while it saves the planet. This bloke is a complete fanatic.
Well, the evidence is in again. This independent report by the CSIRO shows that renewables, solar and wind, backed by batteries and transmission, is the cheapest form of energy. Much cheaper than nuclear. And yet the Liberal Party remains committed to nuclear, the most expensive form of energy, rejected by the Australian people. They just don't get it.
If he wants to keep bagging nuclear energy, you'd think he'd learn how to say it. Bowen's so-called independent report is actually a report constrained by the government's net zero plan, by the way. And if anyone wants to know whether or not it's cheap, then just check your power bill. Based on plans it formulated from previous Gen Cost reports, Labor promised to cut your bill by $275 a year, but instead they've gone up by $1,000 a year. In response, Labor is doubling down now on its renewables rollout. To make sense of this report, let's go to the energy expert from the Centre for Independent Studies, Aidan Morrison. Aidan, good to talk to you again. What did you make of Gen Cost this year?
This year, the headline of Gen Cost should be very unambiguously that coal is the king of low-cost energy. And I think that's something that should be really shouted from the rooftops, that CSIRO's own numbers in this report actually say that coal is now cheaper to build than firmed integrated renewables. And it's strange that you don't hear that from the CSIRO themselves. And on their website, they've simply added some little caveat words. They've said that now renewables are, again, the cheapest low-carbon electricity. So they're literally shifting the goalposts in front of our eyes when they are no longer able, in their own analysis, to sustain the argument that we've had time and time again, that renewables are not just environmentally virtuous, but are also economically virtuous. The facts can no longer be concealed, and this report from CSIRO actually demonstrates that coal is now the cheapest form of electricity for consumers, and yet they've bent over backwards to try to conceal that, and a host of other mistakes they've made in previous reports. In particular, their estimation for the cost to firm renewables, that is, providing all the gas and the transmission and the storage to make sort of that intermittent feast and famine energy into reliable electricity. Last time they told us that was between $42 and $48. This time they're saying it's between $48 and $64. There is literally no overlap between draft and final between those two different estimates for how much it costs to firm renewables. So there's just no chance that we can take this report seriously anymore.
Now, don't they also give an artificially low cost for the renewable transition by not counting a lot of money factored in for transmission? And I read some analysis that said they hadn't factored in the cost of Snowy Hydro 2.0 either, which is going to be upwards of $10 billion.
Well, that's right. That's another little switch they have in their kind of two different stories they tell. There's one version of the figures which is meant to be for 2024, which should include the cost of all the projects we've started. And on that count, coal is definitely cheaper than renewables. They have another story to tell, which is about the cost in 2030. And you'd think they're saying that now the cost of renewables has come down. Actually, that's not true. That's exactly where your story comes into it. They basically then say, in 2030, we will have already built Snowy Hydro 2.0 and we'll have already built huge amounts of transmission. So therefore, we can count all those costs as being sunk, even though that's just when consumers will start to pay for it. They put all those costs to one side and ignore them and say, therefore, in the future, renewables will be cheaper. So again, it's just a really terrible accounting trick to somehow create the impression that inevitably these costs are cheaper in the long run, when in fact the exact opposite is true. In the long run, these are baked into your power bill, the cost of transmission and the cost of additional storage, and that's when they'll be starting to hit home. But they've used clever language about this being a report for investors as opposed to consumers to basically conceal the fact that they are not adding up the total cost of things that will land up in your power bill.
What a worry. All smoke and mirrors. We'll come back to you on this in detail again, Aidan. I appreciate it. Aidan Morrison there from the Centre for Independent Studies.